All right, welcome back to episode 2 of the ADH Dads. How you doing, JJ?
Hey, buddy, doing all right. Got my kiddo in bed after a long day of play and crazy and all the wild stuff that goes on at our
Oh
house.
yeah, it's post-holiday season, so we've got presents all over the floor, wrapping paper still out, and all the toys for us to step on.
We got one gift that I was really excited for him. We put it on his wish list, and his aunt got it for him. It's this microscope, and it looks all nice and shiny and stuff. And it wasn't too expensive a thing. You pull it out, and you realize, oh, that silver is not metal; it's just plastic. Let's make sure we handle this thing with care. And he's like taking all these slides and throwing them all over the place. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be a short-lived microscope, but. Yeah, we looked at like apple slices and onions and stuff through it. He was just like all about it. So,
Dude,
fun
those were
stuff.
the best gifts. I remember one of my favorite gifts I got as a kid was a microscope, like this, science kit that my dad got me. And I think that was probably the only gift that I didn't lose, like within the first year of getting it. I had that microscope for like 4 years, and I would look at everything in it, from blood whenever I cut myself to fingernails and dirt and whatever
Yeah,
animals and bugs you find outside.
gotta love those STEM gifts, dude. They really
Yeah.
live, or they really give for a long time. But my kiddo, amazingly enough, he asked for just one gift from Santa this year. He wrote a letter and everything, and Santa brought it to him. And I don't think we're gonna lose that one because it's a dinosaur toy. Imagine that, my kiddo who's obsessed with dinosaurs, and it's bigger than the dogs. So that thing's not going to be lost anytime soon.
So, I'm curious, how many gifts does Santa bring your household?
It's kind of a cool mix, man. So Santa will bring maybe one or two, and the rest come from Dad, and then of course family members and stuff. So Santa kind of just like delivers on the big thing. Last year, what my kiddo really wanted was, those Thomas the Tank Engine wooden tracks and wooden
Oh, yeah.
trains. Yeah, he really wanted an Amtrak that would go on those, and sure enough, Amtrak actually sells those Amtrak trains. So I looked online. And I was like, well, Santa's got to he's got to dish out some money for this Amtrak stuff. So yeah, last year he was pretty happy with that, and so Santa's been delivering each year. So and I'm glad that he hasn't asked for like I guess a car or something, because I'm not prepared for that yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I asked because when I was a kid, I think more presents came from Santa than they did from mom and dad. And when, I came into this relationship here to spoil the kids around the holidays, my wife was like, no, Santa brings one gift. We're getting credit for the rest. I want them to know where gifts come from. So,
Oh man, I hear that. I had it last year where he's like, yeah, Santa brought me this gift. I'm like, all right, well, got some other stuff for me, but all right, well, thanks, Santa.
yeah, we spoiled the kids this year. We got them everything on their list, and even 2 Mercedes that they didn't even ask for. Those little battery powered cars. So we're already spoiling them to the point of buying them multiple cars on the holidays.
Yeah.
So
Don't
that's
forget
been
to get the extra batteries.
yeah. Yeah, our little one has just been in heaven riding up and down the driveway here as I take out the trash. So it's been a fun holiday for us.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah, we've made good on our holidays. And in fact, you actually sent us a little excavation kit in the form of a big egg, and a plaster egg with little dinosaurs in it. And for a kid with ADHD, that thing was not, those little tools. Nah, that wasn't enough. This thing looked like a ball.
Just
you could throw it against the concrete.
That would have been my method.
We came in, and I'm not kidding you, dude. Our black coats were more like like a whitish gray at that point. So.
Nice. I'm glad the little one got some joy out of that. Yeah, we're here talking about co-parenting today is the topic of our episode, and what a perfect topic around the holidays here, because I think that this probably tool is most needed for our situations, right? I think a lot of dads are challenged around this time of the year, with the logistical stuff and who gets kiddos on what day and for how long, and who's spending who on Christmas, and what gifts are coming from who and how they're shared. And, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So I'm really curious to kind of pick your brain today and kind of see how your experience with it this holiday season, and kind of how it's been throughout your journey of divorce here. And I think it would be a valuable insight to our listeners here. So yeah, please, how was the holidays and this time of year? Who got the little one, and how did you guys divide that time up? What did that look like?
Yeah, man. So, I mentioned, stuff on co-parenting in my experience in our first episode. And I'll just kind of circle back around to the experience that I've had with my kiddo's mom. And it's primarily very cooperative and just amicable. And it has been for almost the entire time post-divorce. We were trying to settle into what was best for our kiddo early on. And there was some fear that came into what does that look like when we were still kind of leading up to the divorce, because there were high emotions for obvious reasons. And with those high emotions and and kind of that mentality of what is the other person going to do? I know we're really kind of struggling to see each other here. And now we're having to navigate through what we believe is best for our kiddo. And at one time during it, I remember both she and I had that feeling like, am I going to have to fight this person for custody? And the good thing about our situation is both of us kind of had in the back of our minds that we want our son to have equal time with his parents. And if you look at like the research and what a lot of kids say in survey, that it is that they want both parents, and they want both parents equal time. And then for kids who have been raised primarily by one parent, usually it's the mother, or has been for quite some time of our history. A lot of kids 10 years down the road will say, I wish I would have had more time with my dad. I wish I would have had more nights over at my dad's, stuff like that. So the thing that we tried to keep in mind was what is healthy for our kid. And of course, we had to kind of think on his behalf in some ways, because he was 2 years old when we got divorced. What does help in the situation that I was in is that I was in a state, which more and more states, most states now feel this way, where unless there's reason, like neglect or obvious abuse taking place on one side, the states are going to rule 50-50 custody. And that's kind of based on research and based on what kids say they want with their parents. So we did have to develop a parenting plan, which is part of, the process of going through divorce and creating, that essential structure, legal structure post divorce. But what we did, again, we have a very cooperative style of parenting. There's a little bit of parallel parenting in there, which basically the cooperative is, you talk about how you're going to parent from one house to the next. And parallel is more, that person does their thing and this person does their thing. There's no attempt to try and, do the same thing from house to house. We're kind of in the middle of that. So we do the cooperative style in many ways, and we talk to each other. We ask each other questions like, how have you handled this situation? How have you handled that situation? So you can kind of see with the process of going through, time with kid or time with mom, time with dad, that's also something that we developed over time where, yes, we have a parenting plan that we can fall back on, but that's not something that we have to stick to. If we're going to have discussion, if we're going to be able to, let's say maybe she has a work event and that would be her custodial night. Well, she can come to me first. In fact, I think it's even written in our parenting plan that we have the first right of refusal, which is a very weird way of saying, like, I am the first person you ask if I can, watch my kiddo, which I'm very grateful for because we've done a lot of that. So when it came to this Christmas, specifically, this year it fell on a Sunday, our transition day on the weekend is Sundays at noon. And I asked her, my parents were coming to town to visit, if she wanted to switch up the schedule at all, because we had kind of different things back and forth during this last month, including I had a trip to Missouri, and she also had something going on for her work stuff. So we were kind of swapping back and forth. But so I said, do you want to switch it up? My parents are in town, and she said, no, I want to stick to Sunday at noon. And my parents were only in town for a couple of days, and they would have been here through Monday evening. So that just simply meant that my son wasn't going to be here with my parents' visit for almost half of it. And I just kind of looked at the response that she gave me and said, yeah, that's fair. That's back on what we're currently agreeing with. I didn't think of it as something where she's trying to take advantage of me or she's just not willing to work with me. It was more like, yeah, when it comes down to it, she doesn't need to give me any reasons other than, this is the schedule that we agreed upon. So yeah. So Cohen, he on Sunday morning opened up the remainder of his gifts because he kept asking the days leading up to Christmas, can I open a gift? Can I open a gift? And it was really funny. By the way, my mom's birthday is on Christmas Eve, which they were here for. And in her birthday card that we gave her, he wrote to her, can I open some gifts on your birthday?
Oh yeah, that's the thought process of a kid, right? Yeah. How can I get gifts out of this? There's presents around here. I know one of them could be from me.
Yeah. So he asked her that. She was fine with it, so he opened up some gifts on her birthday. One awesome thing, by the way, I know this is apart from the co-parenting thing, but actually it's kind of related to co-parenting. I'll jump into that really quick. One thing that the courts usually say is you have to agree upon a variety of things when it comes to raising your children. A big one that sticks out for everybody is religion. And that's a tough one. Let's say one person has a religious faith and the other one doesn't. Well, you would think that the default could only be that the child doesn't go to church, because the person who doesn't believe doesn't necessarily want their kid to go to church, because that goes against where their non-belief exists. And so, how do you work with that? Well, for the most part, we work really well. But my mom, she wanted to go to church on her birthday, and we went to a candlelight service. And they had a part where they called the kids up for, a children's message and lighting candles and stuff. And Cohen went up to the front after some hesitation. He raised his hand. He had his hand like this. He was holding his hand up with the other hand because he was getting tired. But yeah, he was really well behaved. And he might have, disrupted a couple of times or interrupted, nothing too extreme. But I was very proud of him to go up there and do that. And I even shared that with his mom. I took some pictures in there, and, she didn't say like, how dare you take him to church or something like that. So again, it's a very open and honest conversation. Schedule wise, we work really well together, and I've yet to really come into any sort of real conflicts.
It sounds like there has to be
answer.
Well, yeah, it sounds, listening to you here, it sounds like there needs to be a lot of curiosity and compromise, right? Like you can't just be so steadfast in your way or the highway. Like, a relationship in general is a two-party system, right? But ever so more needed in a co-parenting dynamic where you guys aren't living in the same household and the kid is bouncing back and forth, and there may be different rules, different structures. You had mentioned parallel parenting, and gosh, I think growing up in a divorced households where my parents also got divorced when I was about 2 years old. So I don't really remember them together. Most of my dynamics around the holidays was being split. I would go to my dad's for a little bit, or my mom's, or whoever I was living with, would go visit for the month of summer, and for a couple of weeks and during the holidays. And I remember that being very stressful as a kid. Having to navigate who I was going to upset or who I was going to let down, who was going to be alone on Christmas, or, and for the existential crisis of a 5-6-year-old, that feels heavy, So, and I know a lot of of us adults get wrapped up in the emotions of the holidays, right? Especially if you're, a single parent and you don't have the kid for the holiday, that could feel very lonely, right? And that's a lot to process, So I always remember thinking about that as a kid, and I don't know if a lot of adults are also thinking about that too, of maybe what's going on in the heads of our little ones, in between their ears during this time, because we may still be dealing with the trauma, the hurt, the past, the feelings, the regret, the loneliness, the what have yous around this time of the year. So that's really cool that you guys are able to kind of step back and allow a little bit of trust in one another, and a little bit of leeway there. I like that term, that parallel parenting versus the co-parenting dynamic. Again, when I was growing up, I don't think that we had my parents had a very healthy co-parenting dynamic. It was very much parallel. We don't talk, at dad's house is dad's house and mom's house is mom's house. And they didn't seem to interfere or talk too much. I don't remember my parents ever being in the same room, at the same time, my dad and my stepmom and my mom and me all together. One time I can remember that, and it was when I went to go visit my mom for the summer and got hurt and ended up in the hospital and having surgery on my hip. And, my dad and stepmom went to the airport together, and there was an exchange from me to them. And, when I was about maybe 14 years old, and that's really the only time I can really remember all four of us in the room at the same time. So, and that's something that, like you said, a kid wants that equal time as much. And I think that that's probably what sticks out the most to me in my experience in a divorced household is I just wanted that equal time as much. I just wanted, just as much time with dad and mom. And I didn't want to feel like I was the one that had to choose, or that they had to choose, or that I was leaving somebody in the dust there. And, you guys are in the same state. You've made a choice to move out of state, to be closer to your son and your ex, and to have that experience in life. And I definitely commend you for that, because, my mom lived in Boston and my dad in Arizona. So, going back and forth was, once or twice in a year kind of ordeal, if that. So we didn't have the opportunities to bounce around in Christmas or split our weeks like that. So, I think your kid is at an advantage to that, because I think a lot of parents kind of can look at this both ways too. I've heard a lot of dads talk and a lot of moms talk about not wanting to do 50-50 because that can be disruptive, right, to a child's habits and routine. But here you are making it work and creating great examples, healthy examples of co-parenting here. So kudos to you, brother.
Thanks, buddy. I got to ask you a question, because, we do the 50-50 and we split our week essentially down the middle. If we do the math, I generally have him a little bit more time. But my question is this, obviously it's hard on the kids regardless, going from house to house. And, I mentioned we've been talking parallel parenting, and there's still some of that going on with us. For example, she's a little more open with her language than I am. And she gave me a little bit of a warning text before I went and picked him up on Wednesday. And she said, he's been swearing a lot at home. And we've had the conversation about keeping that at home. And so then he comes over and he's playing Mario Brothers, and he's just like, he's cursing up a storm. And I said, hey, buddy, I think what would be good to practice at home is not using that language, because I think it's easier to use that language, or at least slip up, when you're at school or somewhere else where it's not really considered acceptable. And, if I were to have my way, which I don't think I need to force my way onto her, I would say, let's just not model that in front of him at all. Not that she's actively thinking like, I got to implant all these words into his head or anything, but kids and some things that are off limits, that's an exciting thing for them. But but the question that I have for you, Colton, is, I'm my kiddo's going back and forth, every week, throughout the week, and it's hard on kids, I think, regardless of what transition looks like. Yours was over greater periods of time. What do you think that would have been like for you had it been, something more like what we're doing every week? Would that have been something that you would have had? Do you believe you would have had greater struggle with, or was that something where you kind of started to ease into the routine of one household, and then when you went to the other household, you eased into routine?
That's a interesting question because, oh man, oh man, off the top of my head, I kind of want to agree with the train of thought that I think that the less disruptive pattern is almost better. But I hate to say that and admit to that. Because I want a 50-50 dynamic here, and I want to create that. And I think that that's important for a kid gosh, but honestly, if I think about that and maybe what that would have done for me, I think it would have been disruptive if I had both parents in the same state and I was going like that, back and forth, transitioning from rules or households, unless maybe there was a better structure there for co-parenting. Because I don't know if that can work with parallel parenting. If you're doing 50-50 like that and splitting the time, you guys really have to be on the same page, right? You have to be steering the ship in the same direction. Where for me, and I had that longevity in between the times I was with my dad and not seeing my mom and going to visit, the rules at dad's were the rules at dad's. And again, mom maybe didn't interfere with that because I'm with dad for the next 9 months. That's his rules and that's his house. So, she didn't maybe feel that there was much power that she could say there, or unless it really maybe came to some severe, consequence moments where maybe I got in trouble for, with the law or underage drinking, or that's a podcast for another day. But, when it came to those situations, maybe there was some talking on the phone and some coordinating about what course of action to take and that type of stuff. But I think that, your dynamic and the way that you guys space it out, you guys really kind of have to be and talk a little bit more about that stuff. And, like I said, I hate to say that the disruption, that I feel would have a negative effect, because again, I think the whole point of this podcast and this episode specifically is to talk about how can we garnish those relationships, right?
Yeah, man, it is tough. And again, too, I think the big thing is how do the parents parent? Like you were saying, the kids want to just, be with their parents, and how did the parents parent? I think affects a lot of that. And, it's definitely tough, but has major positives in our experience. One example, again, like I said, we get along great. We do really well co-parenting. There's was an incident at school where they asked if somebody could come and pick up Cohen, basically during aftercare, right when it started. And they called, or I think they messaged us. They texted us both or something. And they said, somebody could pick up Cohen. And it was her custodial day. But I know her work is a greater distance away from, school than my home is, because I work out of the home. And so I just messaged back saying, yep, coming right now to get him, and picked him up. And his mom wasn't, responding to me like, why did you do that? It's my custodial day. Instead, it was more, what time can I come pick him up? We work it out. And that's really helpful and healthy for our kiddo to see. But it is still tough, because he goes back and forth so frequently. He asked recently, why can't we all be together, live together? And that's one of the first times he's asked that in quite a long time. And it's a very difficult answer. But what I did say, because, you said, I moved across the country. My ex's job essentially is highly specific. So I can work from anywhere. But, because of that, I said to him, I said, yeah, I really understand, buddy. And it's hard. We want to see you every day, just like you want to see us every day. we did move here as a family. We just live in separate households. So I guess the reiteration, what you will read in the, in the books you read about co-parenting and divorce and stuff is that this is something that has, the decision hasn't been made because of the child's behavior or because of something the child did. It's not that at all. You love them dearly and that's what you're there for is to be a parent, to be present and to let them know that they're the rock and they did nothing to create the situation, and therefore the parents are going to be there for them every day, all the time. And so that's what I kind of told him. I said, I'm always going to be there for you. Sometimes you're at mom's and I'm still there for you, and sometimes you're at my place and mommy's still there for you. We just live in
Yeah, I think a lot of guys can get really wrapped up in it's not my weekend, or it's yours, or I've got this thing to do, or it says this and you need to do this, or it's your time kind of mindset. So I think it's really important that, the kids are at the forefront of that. If both of you have that, then this is easy, right? The co-parenting, the communication, the boundaries, the rules, the differences, it becomes easy because as long as your kid is at the forefront of it, it's easier to get to a conclusion with that. So how do you navigate the boundaries then? How do you navigate the disagreements? What if, you find out mama's got a rule that you don't have, or vice versa, mama finds out you've got a rule that she doesn't agree with. How do you guys handle that? How do you chip away with that? And what are some ways that we can compromise on some of these things?
Yeah, I one of the big things again, because we do parent in separate times, we don't overlap. I've entrusted her with, making the decisions that she believes are best for, him when he's with her. And I believe she does the same. I would say, honestly, if I were to kind of think about this, and I'm, what, I'm going to be back and forth here. Sometimes I think she's the more permissive parent. Sometimes I think I'm the more permissive parent. What does that say about us? It says that we're trying to figure this stuff out. But, I know through my experience with her, being in relationship with her, that we have certain different personality differences. And what I always kind of fall back onto is I might not see the world the same way she does, whether it's politics, religion, what have you. But she sees my son the way I see my son, which is he's a beautiful gift of this world, and we have the opportunity to help him succeed in this world. What does helping him succeed look like? It's it's gentle guidance. It's encouragement. It's an effort to keep in contact with each other about important things, and kind of go from there. So going back to when we were first going to get divorced, I kind of made this almost like this mental switch. I knew that my relationship with her was essentially going to change. We were going to go through an uncoupling process, and now we were going to be a team. We're going to work together for the success and well-being of our son. So as you've heard in research, you've heard in books, the idea that is child-centered focused. So how do I communicate with her? Well, it should probably be child-centered, especially toward the beginning. And she actually, Colton, drew a boundary with me at one point that I was really, I was really confused by at first, but then I kind of understood more later. She was dealing with a lot of the emotional turmoil that everybody goes through when they go through divorce. It's hard. You're grieving a loss, essentially, a death that doesn't truly die. It takes on a whole new meaning. I would send her pictures of Cohen while he was with me. And of course, they're pictures of him smiling, not him, drowning in his tears or anything like that. And she asked me, she said, "Can you please not send pictures of him?" And what I realized in those moments, she said, "This is really hard for me." I was a few steps down the road. I had gone through the process of forgiveness and kind of acceptance of where I'm at. And she was still trying to grieve what the loss was. So here I am sending happy pictures of Cohen, and she's still, thinking this is a reminder of I am not seeing my son every day. And I was sitting there thinking, oh, I bet she would love to see Cohen doing well while, he's with me, or while he's not with her. So she drew this boundary, and it took me a little bit to think, I need to get outside of myself and get into the shoes of somebody else, regardless of the pain that experience, what the pain was that we created toward each other. None of that is as important as our child-centered focus now, because we are in the process of uncoupling with each other.
Yeah, I being the stepdad here, I would like to offer a unique perspective because, boundaries is a part of my world here, in a co-parenting dynamic between exes. I'm the guy in the middle, trying to help out, but also trying not to step on anybody's toes or overtake somebody's parental power or, but also still trying to feel like I have a voice and, but it's a tricky road to navigate, I've definitely dealt with a lot of, what is appropriate for, the new guy to be doing with participating with the kids or taking over or, with helping with bath time or getting the kids dressed for school or what that looks like or how soon is too soon or when you let somebody help with that in a relationship dynamic or if or when it's appropriate, from dad's perspective or bio parents' perspective. So there was a lot of tricky scenarios that I had to be open with, because these aren't my kids and I can't go in with guns ablazing saying, this is how we're going to parent and this is what I believe is right. And I don't agree with this and you're doing this, this, and this wrong, right? Because no person, especially no man, wants to hear that from some guy coming in and, trying to hang out with their kids, So I think for me or for people in a step parenting dynamic or dating somebody with kids, I think there needs to be an openness and a curiosity to it. I take more of I try to take more of a passenger position, with the parenting and then I just try to support my wife and what she's doing. And sure, I can offer opinions and we can have some great discussions about it. But, at the end of the day, I try to support her and see her perspective and the way that she's trying to parent with the kid's dad. Right. Because again, I don't want to rock the boat here. And I definitely don't want to, want another man to feel like I'm coming in to take over the kingdom, so to speak, So yeah, it's definitely a part of my world and I definitely have to approach it with a curiosity and an openness. And there's been moments where, from my perspective, I just want to come in and help. And, I want to, oh God, I see this single mom with 3 kids and bath time is a mess and chaos of the witching out. The kids are melting down. Oh, it's, like I just want to get in there and, all right, here, I got the towel. Let's go. Bedtime. You do this. I'll do this. You brush. I'll get the teeth, well, I got the bedtime stories picked out, all right, let's nail it. Tag team. Boom. Yeah, we did it. That's how I want to help. Acts of service is definitely one of my love languages and how I like to express myself in a relationship. But again, those can be triggering, just like pictures can be triggering, right? You're sending it from a perspective of, look at this beautiful thing that we've created. Don't you want to see it? But for certain stages of this process of divorce, and that could be triggering, again, I think that over the course of these 3 years here, we've chipped away at some of those boundaries in my dynamic, and we've been able to kind of, reevaluate, pivot, and restructure, how I'm helping and where and when and what that looks like. But, it takes a little bit of curiosity, a lot of patience, just because you're ready to set a boundary, accept a boundary, or walk a boundary doesn't mean that the other person is, and it also doesn't mean that they won't be down the line or with talks or support or healthy communication, so a lot of talking from me.
That's good. And it's definitely a difficult position to be in, as you know, as I don't want to like add to the reinforcement of the stress of the situation, but it is a difficult position to be in because, you know, just the idea of entering into a, you know, to the picture, as you know, as we put it, the timing of that, from the kid's mom might be one, you know, might be one timeline, and the timing of that from the kid's mom's or the kid's grandma's perspective could be different, or, you know, the ex's perspective, or your own perspective. And if you ask a bunch of people what that timeline should be, you know, for when, you know, a possible romantic partner should be introduced to the kids, you're probably going to get a ton of different answers if you just enter a room and ask the question. So it's not an easy place to be. And that's why, you know, I kind of fall back on that whole child-centered approach. You know, you got to, of course, we have to hand over some trust to our former, you know, partner, former spouse, to make those decisions, because we are no longer part of that decision process. We can focus on our children and say, you know, I believe it's best for the children if you introduce this person at this time. But that's, you know, that's not the trump card here. The trump card is the person making the decisions for themselves and their happiness. So what I would say, from my perspective, Colton, which of course is related to your situation, is the fears that I would experience, I would imagine from my side of things, is if Cohen's mom does find somebody, is, will Cohen, you know, see this guy as like, he's the friend, he's the cool guy, he's the guy coming in and, you know, bringing all the fun to the situation. And then he comes to Dad's, and Dad has more rules and, you know, expectations in the household because this is the established house. There's that fear, that jealousy. But what's more important here? It's the child-centered approach again. And I would absolutely love for Cohen to have another male father figure in his life that is reliable, loving, caring, you know, helps him with everyday things, choices, and listens to him. That to me sounds like a phenomenal outcome for my son, a much more stable and healthy outcome than if he's going to just have to have a father figure here, a mother figure here, in his mom and his dad, and that's it. To me, no. I mean, just the amount of stability and structure that comes from an additional person is a huge gift. Obviously, you know, you talked about discipline techniques and stuff like that. That's a complicated thing, and, you know, again, there's timelines and stuff, and how do you implement that from the person coming into the family? I think that's a discussion for for an entire episode or two or three. But I would say this much. I would say that the person coming into the family typically has the responsibility to be the united front with the biological parent. So what does that look like in the household? It looks like you support your wife, you understand, you learn her, and therefore you are applying motherly techniques with your children in the house as this progresses and as you become more comfortable as their parent figure and somebody that they can trust. And I believe you've already established that for yourself, buddy. And it's awesome. You have one of the coolest families I think I've ever not officially met in person yet, but know enough about to be like, for me to say, like, I want that. That's the truth of the matter, is I really want that. And if that can happen for my one boy someday, man, I'll be so happy. The rest of life doesn't matter. We've already accomplished something major.
Well, gosh, you know, thank you, JJ. I appreciate those words. And, you know, I think it's so important for me to be the supportive figure in this scenario because, you know, from my own experience, you know, I had a stepdad. I still have a stepmom. You know, my dad and my stepmom have been together for over 20 years now. And, you know, and my stepmom or my stepdad, you know, came and entered and left the picture, you know, within a 5-year period or so. He wasn't in the picture for too long. And I remember it being a very toxic experience. And me and him definitely didn't have a close relationship. But, you know, if I think back to like how my stepdad handled it, having a kid in his life versus how my stepmom handles it, having a kid in her life. And I'm trying to think about what we're talking about here. And, I think the very masculine approach from my stepdad was well, you're in my house. These are my rules and I'm going to make it, where my stepmom was more of the approach that we're talking about. Well, this is your kid. You get the reign here and you get to say, because this is your kid, to my dad. But I also felt that created maybe a little bit of resentment between my dad and my stepmom, and between my stepmom and me, and that there was maybe some maybe unsaid feelings or hurts or desires that never got really touched on throughout that whole experience for my stepmom and for me. I don't know too much about what happened between my mom or my dad or my stepmom or my dad. All I know is that, dad and stepmom were together before he met my mom, and they didn't work out. And my dad met my mom, had me. Then they didn't work out, and dad and stepmom ended back up together. So I always maybe felt a little bit of, unsaid resentment there coming from my stepmom. It's never been really talked about or expressed or, but I felt that as a kid, and maybe that was just in my head or a little bit of insecurity that I had. And again, now that we're having this discussion, I'm maybe trying to pinpoint that resentment to, that power dynamic in my dad and hers relationship of maybe not having as much of a say as she wanted with the rule setting or the discipline dynamics and that kind of stuff. And when she did try to take over it, oh man, we clashed heads, right? It was all, you're not my mom kind of talk. And, so I wasn't the easiest kid, to deal with her and to want to listen to her. So I think that's very important for me in my journey as a step parent is, how can I listen? How can I not yell? How can I discipline as least as possible? Which I'm going to be honest with you, brother, as a parent, you got to discipline at some time. I'm using the word discipline, but I don't use it in a consequence type of shame, punishment type of way. I'm talking maybe discipline in a more communicative, let's talk about how your actions affect people or the world around you kind of discipline, or this is why we shouldn't do this because of A, Y, and Z, and these are the repercussions. Not go to your room and because I said so and go to a timeout kind of discipline,
Yeah, that's good, buddy, because I can tell you today, I had a day where it was definitely not the best response to the challenge that was set before me. But one thing I this is kind of coming off the top of my head based on what you said, which I appreciate. This is a brilliant thing to kind of keep rolling here. Is the idea of stuff unsaid and possible resentments and stuff taking place with a step parent. It is a different dynamic. We'd like to think that people can just make it work, the first time around, but that doesn't always happen. But when you do choose to date somebody who has a child, you're doing what everybody does when they date people anyways, which is you didn't know this person until a certain point in their life, and now you're getting to learn them. And kids are an extension of us in many ways too. So we're getting an opportunity to learn more about our dating partner through their kids, which is a pretty remarkable thing. You get to learn about what their relationship with their kids is like. And that gives us, a good understanding of how to manage relationship with them. So yeah, I guess my big thing is the conversation, like you said, is communicative, being curious and asking questions and stuff with our dating partner and their children. That's ultimately what gets progress and gets us to a higher level of relationship. So we're still dating somebody who has a history of being themselves over many years. And, whether it's talking about finances or politics or religion, which tend to be, divisive topics, rearing children is yet another one. That's something we have to kind of, if we want to have kids with somebody, or if we want to be involved in a family of established, children and whatnot. That's just another part of getting to know the person that we want to fall in love with. So I think it's a great opportunity at that point to in the dating process and eventually, meeting the kids to learn more about this person that we're trying to fall, that we're hoping to fall in love with. And man, can you imagine falling in love with bonus individuals as well? That's a pretty remarkable place to be. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It's actually usually much harder, but it also gives us a greater opportunity to experience a depth of love that we wouldn't otherwise if we were just dating back in high school.
The theme that I'm kind of pulling out from this conversation here seems to be curiosity. Even going back to how we co-parent here and how we talk to our kids, and I think curiosity is really the key. I was a horrible communicator, man. My last marriage, I was a horrible communicator. For most of my life, I was. It was just like feel emotion, vomit out. And I think, and through that lack of communication, I grew a lot of frustration and resentment for a lot of my communication partners because I didn't have the right tools to express myself or to be curious or to know what to do with the information that was presented to me. I would get misheard or misunderstood and get defensive because I wasn't heard right, or that person was taking this out of context or treating me this and I didn't mean to say that. They heard this, but that's a me problem. That is the communicator's problem. And God, I remember butting heads with my dad so much as a little one, about my dad trying to get me to don't use this language or use this word, or it's Nate and I, not me and Nate, or whatever it was. And I was just, you're not even listening to me. It's like, you don't even want to understand me, but, he had such good points there. It's like taking a communication class. You got to have your ethos and pathos and your right setting, and you got to have the right emotion and the right dialect and know how to present your information and who you're presenting to, and not for the sake of manipulation, but for the sake of curiosity and compromise. And a lot of people look at compromise as both parties are losing, right? You never are getting what you want fully. A lot of people look at it like that, where I look at compromise as everybody wins, as again, if we approach it with curiosity. And the success for me with in more recent years with my communicating has been the curiosity aspect. How can I put this conversation into a question? How can I ask you a question and see what you think you should do rather than me telling you what you should do or what I think the problem is or how to fix this? What do you think it is and how do we get there? And what tactics would you employ and how does that make you feel? And, I think that curiosity and generative inquiry aspect of it is really how we can chip away at this and build bridges.
Yeah, man. And, it's funny to me when we think about, marriages breaking down, and what often takes place is we tend to have a lot of curiosity at the beginning of a relationship. People call it like the honeymoon phase and stuff. And, at that time or at that stage, people can't do anything wrong. Like, oh, I'm sorry for this. I'm sorry for that. Oh yeah, no. Oh yeah. What did you think about you? There's just so much curiosity toward the beginning, and it shows us this interest in this other person. And, in some ways we put them on a pedestal and think they can't do any wrong. And then we start to move in with our emotions and we get comfortable and stuff. And then we start to realize, not intentionally, we start to try and in some ways inject ourselves into their story. And if it doesn't quite fit right, we start to feel something inside of us. And eventually, those turn into arguments and stuff. And then you talked about defensiveness. One of the big things that I think it's a complete opposite side of the coin is, you mentioned curiosity. The other side of that is invalidation. Invalidation works in a way where I'm not really listening to this person. I'm just waiting for my opportunity to speak because this is my situation, and my situation actually comes before yours. I'm gonna instead of really truly listening to you and showing curiosity, I'm actually going to speak over you and invalidate you because whatever you said is incorrect, and this is the correct way of thinking. Too often we find ourselves or people find themselves in a state of invalidating their partners, and that corrodes and erodes the trust that was built through that initial curiosity and, oh, this person's so amazing. Now we're telling them, oh, they're actually not that amazing, and here's why. Because I need to speak over them because my stance is actually more accurate, and therefore yours, you're incorrect.
Brother, you're speaking my language. I think I spent the last 9 years of my previous marriage having the same argument that we just never got to the end of because we just kept interrupting each other, before the point was actually made, and I think, man, so many marriages fall into that trap, of, yeah, but you said this before they even get to the point of the argument.
Yeah, man. I definitely was I don't know, invalidation ninja at times in my marriage. And there are things that unfortunately I saw after the fact that I'm really disappointed in the person I was. For example, I was the one who did most of the cooking, did most of the meals and stuff. And not always did I clean up the kitchen afterward. And that was a sore spot for her. She would talk about how, usually would come out in a way that wasn't probably the healthiest, but she would get upset about the kitchen being so messy. And in my mind, I was thinking, how petty of her to get so upset about this all the time. Like, doesn't she see that I did this? I cooked this and stuff. Well, now you see how what I did is I made it about me. I didn't think about, okay, perhaps we have this conversation that just needs to happen about the trust in this relationship, the expectations. I mean, for goodness sake, I never breastfed my son once. She certainly did a pretty damn good job of that. And it was expected of her. And she took on that role, and she probably took on the role of caring for him throughout the night far more than I did. And I got into the comfortable space of, well, that's kind of her role because she has the milk to sustain our child. And then here I am getting meals cooked and stuff. And then, just kind of leaving the dishes every now and then, a messy kitchen. And she's like, well, you didn't fulfill your end of the thing here. What's the deal? I mean, why can't you take care of this? And I would get upset saying, I've cooked. What are you talking about? I did all this stuff. And the arguments were more complex than that, but still that's essentially what took place. Is I did not allow her the opportunity to not feel, or to feel, like she was kind of being underserved. And that's a big issue that I think a lot of people get trapped into, is that they think of themselves and their situation first, and their defensiveness rises, and therefore the trust goes away.
Yeah. Think about how many marriages would be saved if we were all as selfless as a breastfeeding mother.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right, though, in what you're saying here. We do live in this tit for tat kind of mindset as human beings, and especially in relationships, where, like you say, we go into it in the beginning stages with curiosity, but somewhere along the way, there becomes this expectation of, well, I cooked. How could you expect me to do the dishes? Or, we can't. Sometimes you just gotta just accept your role and you do it and you make the marriage work, without the expectation of, well, I'm hoping for the foot massage later because I gave the back massage now, or I'm hoping for the meal now because, I gave it the last 4 days or whatever. Sometimes it just is. And think about how many arguments can be saved if we can get away from that and just, be happy to be the one to cook and clean every night, while mom's breastfeeding or doing her thing or whatever the role is that you guys have established,
Mm-hmm. And of course it's a very complicated thing, but if we just think of it this way, we're courting somebody, we're trying to make a great impression. So it's, we cook a meal and then we say, oh no, don't worry about the dishes stuff. I'll take care of it. You're pursuing this person, and then, it's working out. You two are together. And then you stop doing that. Well, this person sees, oh, well, he used to do these things for me. He's not doing it for me anymore. My value must have decreased. Something in me is not valuable enough to him anymore. there's going to be some things where, like you make a compromise, and maybe you don't do this time or that time. But when it becomes a regular thing, the partner in that situation, the receiving partner, the person who's supposed to be expecting these acts of service from us, is going to look at that and say, I don't know what it is, but something about me must not be good enough in this relationship that I'm no longer being served in this way. And that's a painful thing to think about.
It's funny that we're kind of talking about this now, because I was dealing with this kind of similar situation here. Let's see if I can explain this with a little bit of curiosity and patience, as my wife sits right next to me and is going to hear the story and be like, what happened?
I just got to unmute and laugh a little bit. By the way, we came into this call, Colton, as the co-parenting, subject. And I just want to say we're doing a brilliant thing as ADHD dads right now of kind of going off on a tangent and really running with it, because we are hitting some good stuff here.
That's all right. My wife hasn't looked over at me yet. She's got her headphones in, so I don't think she can hear me too much. So I'll be safe to describe this story. But in our dynamic here, I am very much the kitchen nanny. I cook all the meals. I clean. That's my space. That's my heaven. I enjoy cooking. I find it very therapeutic. I can go in there. I put on my headphones, get away from the sound, and just chop, slice, method, habit, rhythm, and I just can zone out and just kind of fall into that. And I like it, and I come from a big Italian family on my mom's side, always cooking. And that's a lot of my love comes from that, and men in the kitchen was never a big thing, but there's some very traditional mindsets revolved around that, with my mom and stuff, with where around the holidays and stuff, especially, there's so many people, there's not enough seats at the table. It was a very Italian machismo mindset, even with the women of our family, of, well, the men sit at the table and eat first. The food's ready. There's not enough seats. The men sit and eat first. The women hang back and sip tea in the kitchen. And, it was like that kind of stuff, and my mom is here helping out for the holidays and stuff like that. We're both sick, taking turns being sick. My wife was sick and I had to, step up to the plate, and then I got sick and was running to the bathroom every couple of minutes, as from our last trying to attempt to record this podcast, and us having to stop because I was having some porcelain problems. But anyway,
what are you talking about?
So, my mom and we're just kind of talking about some stuff, and my mom kind of made a comment of, well, doesn't Maritza ever cook around here? And I kind of got a little defensive about that at first, like, oh God, mom's judging me, I gotta step up, I gotta show her that I can, whatever, I don't know, it's just like you get the insecurities, they all bubble up. I don't even understand it. It's just bubbling up, So, but I went back to my mom later that day and I said, you said something earlier that kind of like I've been thinking about today about that, and like you kind of said it in a way that it may be a problem to you, or that you had some thoughts about that, and I just want you to know that this is a dynamic that we have communicated about. We've talked a bit about it. And though I know that it maybe is a little unconventional, a little untraditional, I'm happy to do this and to pick up the responsibilities. And she's great in a lot of other areas and picks up the responsibilities and the slack in a lot of other ways. And sure, I could tit for tat and say, I cooked the last 7 meals and you should cook me one, especially while my mom's here, and, whatever the case may be, but why? Why? So let me, instead of getting that self-defense, that machismo, that I come from this and my family says this, or whatever, I need to defend my power or place in this house, I was able to approach it from why are you feeling that way, Mom? What's going on? What makes you feel that way, or see that, or say something about our dynamic when this is my stance on it and this is how I feel about it? Instead of I'm right, you're wrong, and you should see things my way, finger in the face, waggle, 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 listen to me. In my household, you don't tell me what to do. I was able to say, what's going on with you? Where's that coming from in your space? Because I'm fine with it, and this is why, and these are my reasons. I've talked to my wife, my partner. We've come to the conclusion. So what's your hang up about it, and what's going on with you? Either way, I'm fine. I've given up that control over you and your thoughts. I'm happy with mine, So again, just a little example of how I'm trying to implement that curiosity with what we're talking about. And like I said, funny that you mentioned the food and the cleaning and the cooking, because I'm sitting here just had that conversation today. So
yeah, and it's cool. You talked about curiosity and we talked about invalidation, and those can both easily play a part in those conversations. And curiosity, going back to the co-parenting thing, that's one thing that I honestly, again, when I started this process of becoming a single father after divorce, I had to somehow make that strategic move. I don't know if it was really necessarily strategic or just a natural kind of progression, but all right, I got to be child-centered. What does that look like? It looks like I am not anymore coming at somebody that I should have an argument with because I disagree with, but rather, place of curiosity. Because when you open up the opportunity to give the other person their voice through at least a method of curiosity, the walls come down, the trust starts to grow, and the opportunity for them to be more curious about your situation also becomes more likely. So you become an advocate for their situation just by simply asking questions about it, because you haven't judged it. Instead, you have given it merit and an opportunity to really stand on its own. And that can also create change over time. Not that we want to be manipulative through our curiosity, but a lot of times if you're curious with somebody, they're more than likely going to find a way to become curious about your situation as well. It's not a guarantee, but it definitely works a lot of the time. People who essentially are enemies throughout their lives, if they just switch that curiosity on, it's pretty amazing how quick they can find out that there's some things about this other person that make them interested and actually make them kind of impressed, and therefore they're going to expect that, or they're going to see that in return as well. Is this person with curiosity coming to them? Well, if you see this way, and it looks like you have some merit behind how you see this, and then you ask a question, chances are that person's going to be like, oh, cool, they really thought something of me here. I wonder what it is about them in this way. It's amazing the returns that exist through curiosity.
Well said, JJ. I really like that a lot. And I think now is a good time to end here. Something that I would like to do at the end of these episodes here is give our listeners some resources. If you have anything based on what we talked about today, or anything that you think may be of value to the listeners, I would definitely like to talk about it now, or throw it into the chats. I've got one here. We talked a lot about curiosity and empathy, and one book that I wanted to kind of throw out there that I think has been very valuable in my communication is Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. An FBI interrogator and negotiator. This guy uses some pretty cool tactics surrounding his experience in that field, and how it kind of can pertain to business, marriage, and parenting. And there's just some really great stuff in there about, tactical empathy and mirroring and validation. And like I said, that was definitely like an eye opener and a head splitter as far as just kind of opening my head and mind and thought process to a way of communicating and dealing with things. So that's definitely mine. If you have any that you want to kind of throw on top of this here.
Yeah, man, I've got a few, and of course we'll continue to kind of expand the library as we have ongoing topics and discussions and stuff, and we'll, I guarantee you we'll be circling around a lot to this stuff too. But kind of one of the basic ones that one of the manuals that I went to kind of more or less navigate the process of divorce and stuff, and specifically, working as a team, family, or whatever, post divorce, was the Co-Parenting Handbook, which the subtitle is Raising Well-Adjusted and Resilient Kids from Little Ones to Young Adults Through Divorce or Separation. And that was written by Karen Bonnell and Kristen Little. It's a good one for anybody going through divorce and wanting to make sure that they're there for their kids, and also in some way there for their other partner in the process of divorce, their divorce partner. Another one that I've been reading recently, and one of the guys that I've been mentoring as well as is picking it up, and we're going to discuss it together, is Co-Parenting Works: Helping Your Children Thrive Through Divorce by Tammy Daughtry. For listeners, just FYI, it's kind of biblical in some ways. It's practical, but then they also talk about, God made you this way and that way. So there is some of that talk in there, but a lot of the sound concepts are still there. They talk about cooperative and parallel parenting. And then they talk about other types of parenting that are less successful. So that one's really, really good. And then, when it comes to the idea of curiosity, one of the big books that really helped me a lot to essentially put to practice the idea of curiosity, and how do you create curiosity in any situation, it's called Make Peace with Anyone by David J. Lieberman. And they do have like kind of a little asterisk in it saying this is not designed for manipulation tactics. This is not designed to control a situation, but generally what you can expect from these types of strategies is this type of outcome and this type of response from somebody. So it's very good practical tips to, taking on maybe a difficult conflict situation, or, like in my situation with like my parents, kind of trying to talk with them and essentially coach them through how they can be more curious about my son. Lots and lots of different scenarios that really helped me a ton. Kind of develop my levels of curiosity that I use today.
Not to worry, guys. We will have all those details in the show notes for you, all the links to the resources and where you can pick those books up. So do not worry if you didn't catch all that. But thank you very much for tuning into this episode of the ADH Dads. I'm CJ.
I'm JJ.
There it is. All right, guys. Stay tuned next week. We hope to hear you back. Please please subscribe, and we hope you like the stuff. Please stay tuned. See you next time.
See you, folks.